All right, thanks so much everybody for coming out this morning. We're here at the Hoe of Prosperity. I'm Stephanie, she, her. We got Allie, they, them. And we got Mario, he, him. We're gonna be talking about pests this morning. And so when you start a garden, you're growing some kind of vegetables. We're all really excited watching the plants grow, and I feel like inevitably at some point in the season something goes wrong. You're like, this plant doesn't look quite right anymore. What the heck happened? So that's our goal for this morning, to talk about some of those things that can go wrong. It's a great time of year to talk about those on the farm because it's April, the bugs are thriving, the weeds are thriving, there are lots of issues out here on the farm. So this is our vision for this morning. We're going to start out here in the classroom, and Allie's going to go over a really cool handout they put together on pests and beneficials, and then we're just going to spend a lot of today walking around and looking at things in action on the farm. We're going to have a heavy insect and bug focus, but pests can be anything that's impacting crop yield. So weeds are also pests, diseases, bacteria, fungal, virus, those are all pests as well. And one of the biggest pests that we have on the farm is in the mammal category, rabbits. So we're going to talk a little bit about those as well. And so we're going to have a really cool game of bug bingo as we walk, which Allie is going to introduce. And then when we get back here at the end, we're going to talk a little more about once you've exhausted all of your other options for dealing with insects and their heavy populations and they're causing a lot of damage on the plants and we need to intervene, we're going to have some of our organic options for dealing with pests, go over those, which pests they're appropriate for, and a little bit of hands-on practice on using the sprayers and instructions on how to apply those sorts of things. So I'm going to pass it over to Allie and we're going to get going.
All right, hi guys. So if you open your little pamphlet, we're gonna go over beneficial insects first. So what are beneficials? They're helpful bugs, and they go into 4 main categories. So we have pollinators, and these are like your bees and your butterflies, and they're just known for flying around, picking up pollen from flowers, and just like helping things grow. We have your predators. These are bugs that we rely on as they hunt and they kill and they consume our pests. They help farmers just by being and staying alive. So examples of this would be like ladybugs and ladybug larvae, like how they eat so many different types of aphids. We also have parasitoids, and these are insects that don't kill their hosts, but they lay eggs inside or around their hosts, and even at the adult stages of their hosts. Eventually parasitoids grow and they'll weaken the host, and it'll like hop out of the host, and it'll effectively kill them. So usually it's like wasps, and they'll like infect like caterpillars, and usually caterpillars are pests, so it's good for us. We also have decomposers. So these are the bugs that break down dead or dying plant and animal materials, and it turns it into like organic matter, and this can be worms, beetles, isopods, even cockroaches. Those also help. So if you go to the next part that says beneficials continued, it just shows like some examples that we have. So like I said, in pollinators, we have the bees, we have robber flies, which are just different types of flies. All types of flies are also pollinators. Butterflies. In the predators, we have ladybugs, ladybug larvae, and lacewings. In the parasitoids, I kind of like put out a stage. So we have the parasitoidic wasp, we have the wasp parasitizing the caterpillar, and then we have the caterpillar with the parasitic eggs. And then in decomposers, we have cockroaches, beetles, and flies as well. So if you flip over, we're gonna go to the part, this is and management. So when you're managing pests, you wanna think of these types of steps. So step 1, you need to really kind of just decide when you're gonna act. So you're just gonna assess the pest population that you have, and then the environmental factors to determine your action threshold. So this would be when the pest population and crop damage levels are so bad that we need to take action. Step 2 would just to be monitoring those pests and looking at and understanding that not all pests need to be controlled. Sometimes environmental factors can take care of the pests on their own. Like if you have a bunch of aphids, you might not need to control them if you have like a lot of ladybugs in your area. Step 3 is prevention. So remove things that help the pest population thrive before using biological agents, because doing things naturally is always a little safer for you and the environment. So for agriculture, this can mean like rotating your crops, selecting pest-resistant varieties, and like aerating your soils. Step 4 is controlling the pests. So if you've done everything you can and the pests are still taking over your garden, it's time to take action via chemicals or biologically. We don't really use chemicals, so I'm not going to go over that. But we do use biologically based pest control methods, or called biopesticides. So these come from like natural sources, and they are designed to target the pests without leaving harmful residues. So examples can include BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis.
I like that.
And it's a bacteria that's found in soils, and basically they have different kinds of strains that attack different types of insects, and the one that we use is for caterpillars. So the reason it'll kill the caterpillars is because they'll eat it and their stomach doesn't have any type of acidity, so it'll break down the inside and then they'll kind of get liquefied from the inside out. And we also use diatomaceous earth, which is fossilized ground up seashells, and it'll effectively just dry out the insects. And then we also sometimes, sparingly, we use neem oil. And we use it sparingly just because it can kill any other insects it comes in contact with. And this includes pests and beneficials.
So this might be a time where, because we have a good organic treatment method for it, BT, which only affects caterpillars, like Allie was describing, and makes them digest themselves, which is just like the gnarliest, grossest thing. But it only affects caterpillars. It doesn't affect anything else. Our plant really is struggling here. So we might come back in a little bit and spray this one down with BT. You want, when you're spraying BT, to hit the undersides of the leaves, because that's where I was looking for the caterpillars, on those undersides. It will break down in the sun after a few days, and so if you can spray in the early mornings or the late evenings, that's generally true for most of our organic pesticides. They don't have long-lasting residues, which is great, that's why we love them, but they don't have long-lasting residues, so they break down in the sun and they don't last as long as some of the synthetics do. So we're growing about 20 different varieties of tomatoes in this field, and we've done a 20 variety tomato trial here. This is our 4th year in a row doing it. Before I worked for the university, before I moved to the Valley, I worked on a commercial farm in the Houston, Victoria area, and we were growing a lot of heirloom tomatoes there and selling them to all the chefs in Houston. I grew all the very pretty, delicious, amazing varieties, and I was like, I sure do know how to grow tomatoes. And then I grew to the Valley. I moved to the Valley. I planted all my favorite tomatoes, and they all failed. Because just the distance, just that 4 hours further south, our winters are warmer. The whiteflies that are such a problem with viruses for us here are not a problem further north in the state because they die off in the winter. But we're blessed with the whiteflies here and all the diseases that come with them. And the biggest disease that's an issue for the tomatoes is tomato yellow leaf curl virus. Second to the Bermuda grass. The Bermuda grass is our first really big challenge here. It was really tough to deal with. The rabbits were the second. Once we got the grass cleared out of the way, and the rabbits, we learned a heck of a lot about which crops rabbits eat and which ones they don't. And so this is what we've landed on that's been working really well for us. It's a netting. It's got big enough holes in it that it can't get caught by the wind. It doesn't keep insects out, so we still are having to monitor for insect issues underneath, but it does physically keep out the rabbits. It also keeps out birds, which can be a problem for certain seedlings. Grackles, especially corn seedlings, they don't even eat them. They just travel down your row and pull them out of the ground and toss them aside just to be mischievous. Yeah. We got it from an orchard supply company called Orchard Valley. We bought it online. We got, I think, a 3,000-foot roll for about $250, which is a lot cheaper than the Agribon fabric as well, a lot cheaper than the really fine insect nettings. And the finer the mesh, the more expensive the price tag gets on those things. Weeds are just a plant that are growing where you don't want them to grow. And if I want them to grow at the edges of my field, then that makes them not a weed. That makes them a desired plant. And we love to have messy edges. I know that it's sometimes hard to convince your neighbors that your messy edges are okay, to kind of adapt to being like, well, maybe I should just get the weed eater and cut all that down. But look at all of these flowers. And all these flowers are encouraging insects. And so the plants in our field benefit from having this mess here at the edges. And so a lot of these just come up on their own and we decide to leave them. We are a little bit selective about what we leave and don't leave. We don't leave the sunflowers very often because they just get too big too fast. But this one is Parthenium. It's a false ragweed. It doesn't get much bigger than this and it's easy to get rid of when we do want to get rid of it. And so we tend to just let a lot of things grow where they've planted themselves or where the birds have planted them. And then there are some areas on the farm where we've planted some native pollinator encouraging stuff on purpose. Our best example is right here. We do have some frog fruit up here at the front, which is one of the really good potential like lawn replacements in the valley. It's like a low growing one. It can handle a little bit of trampling and it makes these nice little white flowers that are, see, we got butterflies going to it right now. And then we got a row of firewheel in the back. That's this really pretty flower right here. Also really great for pollinators. And both of these were originally planted in 2020 and have gotten essentially no care since and just keep reseeding themselves, returning season after season.
Some of them are pests, some of them are beneficials, and some of them were just really cool. So I'm going to pass it around and so that everyone can see them.
Some of them we did see on our walk around, but a lot of them we didn't, and they're all really cool. So sometimes you'll run into UTRGV students that are on the hunt for bugs, and it's because they need to make displays like that for class.
No, yeah, you usually tell because they all have nets. They'll just walk around.
You see some suspicious individuals with nets out there. It might just be for class. And then our last thing that we're going to talk about is our box of pesticides here. So we do have the diatomaceous earth on hand. And I'm going to open up this new bag just so we can pass it around and everyone can kind of see. It's just a powder on the inside, and that powder is the ground up diatoms, the ground up silicone-based sea creatures. And when insects crawl through it, it scrapes on their exoskeleton, and then, yeah, they dry up, they die. Poor guys. Not fun for them, but sometimes we got to. So let's pass around the DE bag. We talked about BT, Bacillus thuringiensis. That's our soil bacteria toxin that pokes holes in caterpillar and larva digestive systems. And this one, it's a liquid, and so we use it mixed in one of our sprayers. It's a tablespoon per gallon, so a bottle this size will go a very long way. I think these are probably like $20, so you can get them at Lowe's, you can get them at Waz, at some of our nurseries in town. And we got our neem. This one's very oily, so it's really easy to make a mess with, but also kind of available at standard nurseries. We're aiming for early in the mornings, late in the evenings, because direct sunlight on oil can cause burn spots on your leaves. That is correct. And then we have a couple that are probably not as relevant for home use, but certified organic farms at a bigger scale are using some of these sorts of things. Pyganic, spinosad, they're a little more intense. You want to pay a little more attention to the application instructions, because just because something's from a natural or biological origin does not mean that it's entirely safe for people. So these are, they are biologically derived, but they are a little more intense. They're better for dealing with some of the hard-bodied insects like beetles and stink bugs and those sorts of things, but they are more expensive. And Pyganic is not one that you're going to see at the nurseries. You're going to have to like order that one from an online specialty supply place. So we don't use those very often here at all. We're more on the BT, neem, diatomaceous earth, insecticidal soap, stuff that we don't have to worry too much about our applicators, the people here that work on the farm that are spending time with these substances day after day. These are all generally recognized as safe things, and we feel comfortable having our students use them here. So, I don't know if we've had any luck troubleshooting our sprayers. Absolutely learning together. If they are working, we'll give people a chance to try them out if they want, and if not, they're gonna close it out, and if you won bingo, or even if you didn't, you can come get some seeds before you head out.